These are the craziest cheating moments in World Cup history. And let's start with one player who actually got away with cheating. Sort of. Jurgen Klinsmann might have got into the All-Star team of the 1990 World Cup, but some of his actions on the pitch were questionable at best. The German striker scored 3 goals at Italia 90, but is best remembered for one moment in the World Cup final when, in the 65th minute, he knocked the ball into the space past Argentina's Pedro Monzon, who flew it with a clumsy, late sliding tackle that Klinsmann jumped over, but then, on landing, the German dived to the floor and flopped like a salmon while holding his face. So, the referee dramatically brandished the red card for Monzon and called for the medics to treat Klinsmann, all while TV replays show that there had been no contact whatsoever, and Germany went on to win the final 1-0 thanks to a dodgy penalty. And Argentina actually finished the match with 9 men, but while Klinsmann fooled the referee, he didn't fool fans around the world who now saw him as a cheating diver. And in England, his reputation was completely in the mud. But for some reason, Klinsmann decided he wanted a break from playing for teams that are actually good at football, so he made the move from Monaco to Tottenham Hotspur, where English fans and the media criticized him at first, but incredibly, after he scored on his debut, he performed a head-first diving celebration that became so iconic that it was known as the Klinsmann dive, and was copied by school kids on pitches around the country as English fans liked how Klinsmann could laugh at himself. So, they actually forgave him, and he became a bit of a cult legend. But another German was to cheat against England a few years later, and his actions caused so much outrage that they actually changed the rules of football, as England were playing Germany in the knockout rounds of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, and it started badly, going 2-0 down early on. But then, England scored, and the momentum swung in the favor of the Three Lions. Moments after that goal, England attacked again, and Frank Lampard hit a shot off the underside of the crossbar, and the ball bounced about half a meter over the line, which was clear enough for everybody around the world to see on TV as an absolute clear goal. But somehow, the referee and linesman both failed to notice this, and so Germany goalkeeper Manuel Neuer quickly grabbed the ball and dragged it back out of the goal before the referee noticed, and Neuer later said, "I realized it was over the line, and I think the way I carried on so quickly fooled the referee into thinking it was not over." But luckily for Neuer, his cheating was ignored, and the media's anger was aimed at the match officials, with even Jurgen Klinsmann calling the decision disgraceful. And also, luckily for Neuer, England were a bit rubbish in that World Cup, so many England fans thought the team could have probably lost anyways. But his blatant cheating did lead to the introduction of goal line technology to stop such skullduggery from happening again. Some of our next cheats will probably never be forgiven, as some of their acts go far beyond gamesmanship and are a stain on football itself. And there's one cheat who even sabotaged his own country's World Cup. Some of the worst cheating isn't from the players on the pitch, but the officials off of it. But while cheating was easier to get away with in the past, these days, there's cameras everywhere. Just ask Cristiano Ronaldo, as during the 2006 World Cup quarterfinal match between England and Portugal, the match suddenly turned nasty, as England star striker Wayne Rooney was sent off after treading on Portugal's Ricardo Carvalho, and Rooney was adamant that it was not a red card. But Ronaldo went over to the referee and said something before he brandished the card, and it's thought that CR7 was trying to get his Man United teammate sent off. Then, just after Rooney's dismissal, Cristiano Ronaldo went cheekily to the Portugal bench, as if to tell him that his intervention had gotten Rooney the red card. Obviously, England lost on penalties, so Cristiano Ronaldo became hated in England, labeled a traitor, and booed every time he played. But Rooney himself just let the whole thing go and said that earlier in the match, he'd also been trying to get Ronaldo booked for diving, and that if he had the chance, he would have also tried to get Ronaldo sent off. And speaking of traitors, one player caused absolute national embarrassment in 2010, as France already went into the South Africa World Cup with plenty of question marks, as head coach Raymond Domenech was perceived as weak and arrogant, which is probably fair, given that the previous time France got eliminated from a major tournament, Domenech had used the post-match interview to propose to his partner. How romantic? And France only got to the 2010 World Cup by cheating, as Thierry Henry handballed the ball twice to assist William Gallas's winning goal in extra time in the World Cup playoff against Ireland. When it comes to World Cup cheats getting caught, France got caught by karma in a big way, as their 2010 World Cup was a disaster. Domenech left key players like Patrick Vieira and Karim Benzema at home, and just before their first match, Florent Malouda wanted a fight with Domenech on the training pitch, and he had to be pulled away. But the real problems came in France's second match against Mexico, when Domenech was angry at Nicolas Anelka's lazy performance and benched him at halftime. In football, usually what happens in the dressing room stays in the dressing room, but this time, someone leaked what had allegedly been said at halftime, and the next morning, a French newspaper published on on its front page all the expletives that Anelka had allegedly said to Dominic, and the whole of France was shocked. So, the French Football Association kicked Anelka off the team, and Patrice Evra said there was a mole in the team, supplying stories to the press. Things then got so heated that the whole team went on strike and spent their training sessions sitting on the team bus before eventually ending their strike but still getting knocked out of the World Cup. Whoever the mole was, they got their comeuppance as the entire French team was banned for the first match after the World Cup. Several players were kicked off the team permanently, and Dominic and his staff were sacked. As well as national disgraces, still to come are global disgraces who cheated the world's youth out of their footballing dreams and offered bribes to make sure that their team won the World Cup, as well as some of the most egregious examples of play acting you'll ever see. But before that, let's have some praise for VAR, because without video assistant referees, this next act of cheating would have gone completely unpunished. In 2018, Brazil got off to a bad start at the World Cup, drawing with Switzerland and then being held by Costa Rica. And with the scores tied at 0-0, the Seleção couldn't find a way past Costa Rica. So Neymar decided he would do what he does best, and in the 77th minute, he flung himself to the floor dramatically after the slightest touch from defender Giancarlo Gonzalez, and Neymar's attempt to win an Oscar for Best Salmon Impression completely fooled the referee, who pointed straight to the penalty spot. But luckily, this was 2018, and FIFA had VAR, so the video assistant referee summoned the ref to the monitor for him to watch Neymar's silly dive again and again, and this time he realized that Neymar was trying to cheat, so canceled the spot kick, and Neymar's theatrics overshadowed all his skillful play, including a crazy rainbow kick. But unfortunately for Costa Rica, they couldn't hold out as Brazil scored two very late goals to win 2-0. But some countries are so desperate to reach the World Cup that they'll do whatever it takes, including using some very dodgy paperwork. And as the World Cup has been extended to 48,000 teams, every country feels like they deserve to be at the World Cup. So when Malaysia realized they weren't very good at football in 2018, they started looking for more players from around the world with Malaysian parents or grandparents. But in 2025, they went too far and processed the eligibility for 7 players from Argentina, Brazil, Spain, and the Netherlands, sending all the paperwork to FIFA, including the birth certificates of them and their grandparents, to prove they were eligible to play for Malaysia. But it turned out that these documents were false. And when Malaysia thrashed Vietnam 4-0, someone made an anonymous complaint to FIFA, and they started digging and found that the players' grandparents had not been born in Malaysia at all. And FIFA banned all the players for a year, gave everyone involved a bunch of huge fines, and overturned the results of 6 matches, awarding Malaysia's opponents 3-0 wins, and the country's football reputation fell even lower than before. But at least Malaysia's fans got to see a few goals, which is more than can be said for the fans of the next 2 teams, as it's not every day that a match is so shameful it gets compared to being annexed by Nazi Germany. And if you watch the World Cup these days, you'll notice that all the teams in each group played their final games at the same time. That's because in 1982, Algeria surprised the world by beating West Germany, and that meant that West Germany were in 3rd place in the group before their final game against Austria. As Algeria had already played their final group game the day before, both Germany and their opponents Austria knew exactly what they needed to do to get through to the knockout rounds. And for Germany, it was simple. They had to win, but Austria had a better goal difference than Algeria. So Austria could actually afford to lose 1-0 to Germany and still finish ahead of Algeria and reach the knockout rounds. So anyone with any common sense would have run straight to the bookmakers and bet their house on a 1-0 win to West Germany. Unsurprisingly, when the game started, West Germany went all-out attack for 10 minutes until they scored, and then both sides played as if they'd signed a non-aggression pact, barely attempting to tackle each other, deliberately missing shots, and in general just passing the ball around in circles, while the crowd in Spain booed them for their blatant cheating and threw eggs at them. One fan even burned a German flag in anger, as this game utterly ruined the sporting integrity of the tournament and was labeled a disgrace by the world's media. But it isn't the first time that playing the final group stage games at different times has caused controversy, as in 1978, Argentina was hosting the World Cup, but at the time, the country was under a dictatorship so brutal that free speech was banned. During the World Cup, the goalposts were painted with black marks to remember all the people that had been killed or disappeared by the dictatorship, and amid that environment, Argentina reached the second group stage where the 2 group winners would play each other in the final. But Argentina's group contained Brazil, so reaching the final was a tough ask, and after Brazil and Argentina drew 0-0, Brazil won their final match and had a superior goal difference, so Argentina would need to win their final match by at least 4 goals to reach the final, and they were playing a really strong Peru side. Controversially, before the match, the Argentina dictator and the U.S. State Secretary barged into the Peruvian dressing room and gave a speech about how important it was that Argentina win the game. And then, a few days after the match, Peru's government received a giant donation from Argentina. During the match itself, Argentina won 6-0, which, for a game in the latter latter stages of the World Cup is a highly improbable scoreline, and Argentina went on to win the World Cup by beating the Netherlands in the final. But years later, 3 of the players on the Peru team admitted that the Argentine government had offered them bribes and threatened them to keep the bribes secret. So Argentina's 1978 World Cup win is probably the most tainted of all World Cups. But there's another controversial Argentina World Cup win coming up. But this next player on our list might have won the World Cup, but he also deserves an Oscar. In 2002, Turkey shocked the world by finishing 3rd at the World Cup, and they were only eliminated in the semifinals by eventual winners Brazil. But they also played Brazil in the group stage, and that match was much more controversial, as in the 86th minute, Alpine Zon fouled a Brazil player just outside the box and was sent off. But the referee gave Brazil a penalty, which they scored to go 2-1 up, and so Turkey's players were rather angry at that decision. And in the 94th minute, Brazil's Rivaldo was wasting time taking a corner, so Hakan Ünsal kicked the ball rather aggressively at his leg. But rather than stylishly controlling the ball, Rivaldo decided to fall dramatically to the floor while holding his face in pain, even though the ball hit him far below the waist. But the referee fell for Rivaldo's play acting and gave Ünsal a second yellow card, reducing Turkey to 9 players. After the match, Rivaldo admitted that the ball didn't hit his face at all, and even though he tricked the referee, Rivaldo's theatrics didn't fool FIFA, who fined him for unsportsmanlike behavior. And he didn't win the Oscar for Best Actor either, as that went to Adrian Brody for The Pianist. But perhaps the biggest cheats in football are not the players on the pitch, but those who run the game from their ivory towers. FIFA's revenue from the World Cup and other sources is supposed to be put back into the game to support grassroots football, build new pitches, and give kids a chance to play the beautiful game no matter where they're from. But these next guys cheated all those poor kids in the world when they took FIFA's money for themselves. But cheats always get caught eventually, and it's hard to outrun the FBI when you're driving a mobility scooter. And that's exactly what happened to FIFA Executive Committee member Chuck Blazer, who was busted for tax evasion while riding his mobility scooter to a fancy Manhattan restaurant. Blazer, who was known as Mr. 10% for arranging a deal where he got a tenth of all CONCACAF sponsorship and TV deals, and he also used the Federation's money to buy himself a Humvee, knew that he was busted. But when confronted with a lifetime in the slammer, Blazer ratted out other FIFA executives and even wore a wire to FIFA meetings. In the end, some 12 FIFA executives were found guilty of crimes such as bribery, fraud, and money laundering, with the bribes totaling more than $100 million, which is a lot of football pitches for kids. But several other high-profile names avoided punishment to this day. But back to the football pitch, and probably the most famous act of cheating at the World Cup is Diego Maradona's so-called hand of God in the 1986 World Cup in Mexico, where in the quarterfinals against England, Maradona jumped up for a challenge with England goalkeeper Peter Shilton, and then instead of trying to head the ball, he punched it with his hand. But the referee didn't see the blatant act of cheating, so the goal stood, and Argentina went on to fraudulently win another World Cup, with Maradona saying the goal was scored a little bit with the head of Maradona and a little bit with the hand of God. But the title of this video is Players Who Got Caught Cheating, and somehow Maradona got away with cheating in 1986. So let's fast forward 8 years to another incident involving Diego Maradona, who was still playing in 1994 at the USA World Cup. In their opening match against Greece, Maradona scored what would be his final goal of international football, and when he celebrated the goal up close to the camera, his bulging eyes explained why, as it was clear to everyone that he was on a bucket load of drugs. In his next game, he got 2 assists, but then the inevitable drugs test came, and Maradona inevitably bailed it, testing positive for ephedrine doping, which he claimed came from an energy drink, but FIFA weren't buying it, especially as Maradona's drug problems were pretty well known at the time. They kicked Maradona out of the World Cup, and without their talismanic playmaker, Argentina quickly got knocked out of the World Cup and were sent home too, ending the international career of one of the sport's most legendary players.